This is Kevin Zimmerman here, Arizona Desert Swarm. We have a special guest with us, good friend, boys, Ari Wasserman of Buckeye Sports Bulletin, the Scouts Network's Buckeye affiliate. Of course, Ari is also known as a University of Arizona graduate. Daily Wildcat worked with him there. Ari, let's just talk about your weird position in this whole deal. What what does it feel like? I mean, you're kind of both. Yeah, just talk about
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it's pretty interesting to think that, things always seem to come full circle in life. Obviously, my parents and I grew up in Scottsdale, and I went to Tucson for school and was there for 4 years. Have a lot of great memories covering Arizona's football team, mostly for the Wildcat, and obviously made a lot of my closest friends there at that time. That obviously we all keep in touch and have some fun. But my professional life in the time since, I've covered Ohio State. I've been around this basketball team for the last 3 years now, and obviously have family roots here also in Ohio. So it's definitely an interesting position. I mean, I'm very familiar with both programs, obviously, and I think it was bound to happen eventually with the success of both programs that these two teams would meet up. And now it's going to be in LA with a lot of familiar faces, and a lot of reporters I've worked with, a lot of friends that I've spent time with, and it should be an interesting basketball game, Kevin.
Yeah, and of course the storyline also with speaking of familiarity is Thad Matta, Sean Miller, that whole deal. Just from your familiarity with the two programs, how much similarities are there between the two teams, between these two coaches, and how do you think that will play out, that storyline?
You look at just the history of both coaches. They obviously, Sean Miller was a assistant on Thad Matta's staff, at Xavier, but they even were assistants together on Herb Sendek's staff at Miami of Ohio in the mid 90s, I think in 94, 95, or 95. So these guys really go back a long way, and they obviously learned a lot of the same things along the way, which is why you probably do see similar things in both programs. I think it's kind of funny. I don't know how much I buy it, but we were in the concourse at the arena here last week after Ohio State beat Iowa State, and Thad said that he had spoken to Sean about that fine and about that little outburst he had about he touched the ball thing, and it's like after the brackets were already released, he's acting like they didn't realize that their paths could collide and they found it out on the phone. I don't know how much I buy that, but I think it's clear that these two guys are very good friends. They have very similar roots. They've been through a lot of the same things together, and obviously both programs are both on the upswing right now. There's no question about it.
And on the court, one of the things that I'm kind of curious about are their styles. I mean, I feel like they're similar in that they have, a lockdown defender. You guys have Kraft. Ohio State has Kraft. Arizona has Nick Johnson. What do you see, especially with the backcourt? I'd imagine Kraft would try to lock down Mark Lyons, who has had some huge games lately. And then Nick Johnson, I don't know if you put him on Kraft or what have you, but what do you think about those two guys?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how they approach who defends Kraft and who they put Kraft on. I think that obviously you look at Aaron Kraft's game, and he's had really some pretty interesting performances. Obviously, he's been very big offensively in some of Ohio State's biggest wins this year. I mean, he had that huge performance at Indiana that had Ohio State, beat the Hoosiers in Bloomington at the end of the season. He had a 20-point second half against one of the games they beat Michigan State in, and I think another time, I think he actually got to 20 both times. So obviously, Aaron Kraft is known as a defensive player, and they're definitely going to put him on the guard they feel that Arizona is the most reliant on to score. And the thing about Kraft that I will say is that for the past 3 years covering this kid, even going back to his freshman year, he doesn't lose one-on-one battles with anyone ever. And if Arizona's ever in a situation where they're going to be relying on Lyons to be their go-to offensive weapon and they can't spread the ball around and find other options, they're going to have a really hard time beating Ohio State. Because the thing I will say about the Buckeyes is any given day, no matter who they're playing, they have the best defender in college basketball in Kraft, and they also have the best offensive weapon, or one of the best offensive weapons, in Deshaun Thomas. And any time in college basketball you have two players like that, they're going to really give the opposing team a hard time. But the thing is they can be beaten. If Arizona can take away Deshaun Thomas from being the only guy that wins, the only guy that beats them, Ohio State will have a hard time winning, because they have had offensive issues, and anytime you can force Ohio State's guards to knock down, jump shots, that's always an unfavorable situation. They want to turn you over. They want to get into transition. They want to score easy buckets. And then if you make Ohio State work for their offense on, half-court settings and settle for jump shots, they could be in trouble. So it'll be an interesting game.
Yeah, and we'll get into in a little bit about the other guys, but let's just talk about Thomas for a second. I think one of the more intriguing matchups also in this is Arizona's Solomon Hill, a guy who's, at the next level projects really to be a small forward, but he's just a mismatch as a power forward, and that's why Sean Miller plays him there to start games. Can you kind of describe Thomas's game and how he kind of matches up against Hill? Because they're both kind of, I think they're both hybrids kind of in the college game. Am I wrong in that?
Well, I think that's a big thing for Arizona to have a guy that can, bang with the big guys, but also at the same time be athletic enough to catch, Deshaun Thomas on the outside. Because the thing that you will notice about Deshaun is he's played at the 5 this year for Ohio State when they go small. So, and he's also their number 1 3-point threat. So it's kind of a situation where last year a lot of teams had a hard time defending him in the NCAA tournament, and he averaged 19.2 points a game during those games, and then obviously Ohio State went to the Final Four because of it last year. Now, obviously, you take Jared Sullinger out of the mix, and things change a little bit, but, Deshaun Thomas is definitely a guy that is going to be able to score with his back to the basket. He'll get to the rim off drives, and he can knock down shots from the outside. So, if Hill is an agile player that can, really get physical with him, but at the same time be athletic enough to guard him on the wing, I do believe that might be a pretty solid matchup for Arizona. I think the thing that they need to do the most is play physical basketball, try to get him outside of his game. Thomas likes to score the ball more than anybody I've ever covered in my entire life, and if you guys slow him down a little bit, if Arizona is able to kind of, frustrate him, he does force shots. He does not always the, wisest person with his shot selection. So if you rattle Thomas and make other Ohio State players beat you from the outside, Arizona certainly has a chance.
So you're saying Deshaun Thomas is like a bigger Mark Lyons who, yeah.
I don't know. Does Mark Lyons take a lot of shots out of the flow?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
and that could be a problem for Arizona, because if Kraft is on Lyons and frustrating him, and he's taking shots not only well defended when he's being well defended by Kraft, but also is eager to score, then that can also be an issue, because you want to make as many chances to score on Ohio State. You want to take as much advantage of that as possible, and the last thing on earth you want to do is waste possessions, because Ohio State certainly is going to, that's what happens. You take a forced shot, you miss it, it hards off the rim, and they're in transition, and they're finishing on the other end. You want to have good possessions, score the basketball, and make them slow it down and score in their half-court offense.
And, yeah, so Arizona's probably main concern would be Lyons' offense, really. I mean, he's had success the last few games with, just dominating guys who can't guard him worth a lick. But, in Pac-12 play, that was the biggest issue with Arizona, was him, bringing the ball up the court, chucking a terrible 3 without passing it. He probably won't get that chance with Kraft on him, because I imagine Kraft will be on him. That's just my guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the biggest issue. For you guys, I guess maybe the question mark is how you defend Arizona's bigs. Tarczewski's been playing great lately. Brandon Ashley's come off the bench, and Jarrett, I believe the other day, just got cleared. He had an elbow injury. How do you deal with that size? Does Ohio State have the guys to at least score in the paint? Because I think that's the biggest issue, is teams haven't been able to score in the paint against Arizona's length.
Well, Ohio State's big men aren't offensive weapons, so that's not the way that they're going to try to score. Mm-hmm. And I think that actually probably plays into Ohio State's favor, because if you do rely on a big man, like if you go back to last year and Jared Sullinger was still on the team and they tried to play inside out a lot, then that probably would be more of a disruption to their offense. Amir Williams is Ohio State's starting center. He's a sophomore, but he's very tall. He's just good a blocker, but he really is no offensive threat. And in fact, he's got very weak hands. He fumbles a lot of balls. He can't really corral rebounds, and when he does, he really struggles to go back up with it. So really, I think if you go look at their stats, they might average maybe 10 points, 11 points, 12 maybe, between their two big men. The guy that really does have the biggest impact in the paint for Ohio State is Evan Ravenel, and he's a fifth-year senior who transferred from Boston College now, that kind of comes off the bench and can run with Ohio State, provides energy, will bang in the paint a little bit, but in terms of where Ohio State gets their offense, it's usually not from, trying to rely on people to post up people inside, or, really it's more about Thomas and trying to get to the rim in transition and doing different things like that in order to get easier buckets. Because really when Ohio State does struggle is, like I said earlier, when they're in their half-court set and they have to try to find ways to manufacture, points out of that set.
Yeah, and Arizona this season has had trouble with turnovers, not lately, but, with Mark Lyons not being a real point guard, they could have that issue. And, of course, I think the size, if they do put Thomas at the 5, I guess, would be an issue, especially in the half court. Even in the half court, I mean, with, they'd have a big on Thomas, I'd assume, right?
Well, the thing about when Ohio State goes small is when they go small, they don't want to ever be in the half court.
Okay.
Now, if you mean Arizona offensively or Ohio State offensively?
Arizona offensively will turn it over, and then Ohio State will have the ball.
Really what happens is you've got a player named Shannon Scott who's a point guard that might have been a starting point guard at a lot of other schools right now, but they can't take Aaron Craft off the floor, but they play small with both of those guys on the floor. And I think Shannon Scott's about the quickest defender I've seen in a really long time. He comes out of nowhere. He's a game changer. And if you struggle with turnovers, he's definitely the kind of guy that'll pick out your pocket, and the next thing you know, he's at the rim like in the snap of a finger. It's pretty incredible. So if Arizona struggles with turnovers, and especially careless ones where it can let the other team get out in transition, that's the last thing you want to do, because Ohio State, as much as they score offensively, can also score 6 or 8 points in a 1-minute span because you're sloppy. You got to be focused. You have to be able to hold on to the ball and realize that things aren't always going to happen. Aaron Craft's going to frustrate you. That's the thing that makes him a great defender. He's always frustrating the opposition, and when he's doing that, it turns into turnovers and carelessness and people getting anxious to try to get to the rim. And if Lyons is sped up by that or taken out of his game plan, and that really could hurt them. It really could.
And how is that Iowa State game was close? What would you say was Ohio State's issue in that? Was it an issue, or was Iowa State just a good team that competed with them?
I think Iowa State's a really good team, and I'll be honest with you, that was a tough matchup to win for Ohio State because you take 5 players in Iowa State's top 5, and they're in the top 15 in the country in 3-point shooting. So I don't know how much of the game that a lot of people watched, but Ohio State did get up by 13 with 8 or so minutes to go, and then Iowa State just got right back in. It was knocking down outside shots, and during that stretch, Aaron Craft probably played the worst 3-4 minutes I've seen him in his career. He had a defensive blunder that allowed somebody to get to the basket pretty easily. He dribbled the ball off his leg and out of bounds. He missed 2 front ends of a 1-and-1, and really, Ohio State did look like they were rattled. And for a while there, it looked like if Aaron Craft can't really wake up, they might lose this game. But of course, as a competitor the way he is, he really made it work. Obviously, knocked down that big shot and lifted Ohio State into the next round. And this is the NCAA tournament now. You're fighting for a chance to get into the Sweet 16. You're going to have to win games like that. And I think if you look back at a lot of deep NCAA tournament runs in the past, there are a lot of signature moments. I mean, even Ohio State's Final Four run in 2006, there was a last-second shot 3-pointer by Ron Lewis to lift Ohio State out and force overtime, and they ended up winning a game in the NCAA tournament that way. So, I think Iowa State was a good team. They were very athletic. They had a lot of seniors, which Ohio State only has 1. So I think that was just a tough matchup. But, it's about surviving and advancing, and that's what Ohio State did.
Final thought. What is your plan as far as LA? What are you going to do? Are you going to have time to see LA, do things perhaps with old Arizona friends?
That's one of the coolest things that I'm looking forward to. Obviously now I'm a member of the media, and my job right now is to go there and cover the game, write about what happens. I've got no rooting interest, unfortunately. Sometimes sports aren't quite as fun as they used to be when you're in this job, but yeah. At the same time, sitting on press row with a lot of familiar faces, from the Daily Star and the Daily Wildcat. And, I'm definitely going to have some time. My flight's not till Monday evening. So if Ohio State loses by chance, I'm going to get a nice little weekend in LA out of it. And if they play Thursday, Saturday, I'm definitely planning on going out on Friday and enjoying the city a little bit. But, obviously with the newspaper we put out and with Twitter and Scout and, working for Fox Sports, we've got a lot of different writing that I'm responsible for. So it should be an awesome trip, but at the same time, I'm probably going to make it count. You know that, Kevin.
So responsible. All right,
Yeah.
I gotta run, but thanks for taking the time, man.
Nope.